Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and One Night. Now, when it was the 825th night, she resumed, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Hassan and his wife, accompanied by the ancient dame Shawahai, fared forth from the palace, they made sure of deliverance, and they walked on till they came without the city, when he fortified his heart, and smiting the earth with a rod, cried, Ho, ye servants of these names, appear to me, and acquaint me with your conditions. Thereupon the earth clave asunder, and out came 10 Ifrits, with their feet in the bowels of the earth, and their heads in the clouds. They kissed the earth 3 times before Hassan, and said, as with one voice, Ad Sumas, here are we at thy service, O our Lord, and ruler over us. What dost thou bid us do? For we hear and obey thy commandment. And thou wilt we will drive thee up seas, and remove mountains from their places. So Hassan rejoiced in their words, and at their speedy answer to his evocation. Then taking courage, and bracing up his resolutions, he said to them, Who are ye, and what be your names and your races, and to what tribes and clans and companies appertain ye? They kissed the earth once more, and answered as with one voice, saying, We are 7 kings, each ruling over 7 tribes of the jinn of all conditions, and Satans and Marids, flyers and divers, dwellers in mountains and wastes, and wolds and haunters of the seas. So bid us do whatso thou wilt, for we are thy servants and thy slaves, and whoso possesseth this rod hath dominion over all our necks, and owe him obedience. Now when Hassan heard this, he rejoiced with joy exceeding, as did his wife and the old woman. And presently he said to the king of the jinn, I desire of you that you show me your tribes and hosts and guards. O our Lord, answered they, if we show thee our tribes, we fear for thee, and these who are with thee, for their name is legend, and they are various in form and fashion, figure and favor. Some of us are heads sans bodies, and others bodies sans head, and others again are in likeness of wild beasts and ravening lions. However, if this be thy will, there is no help, but we first show thee those of us who are like unto wild beasts. But, O our Lord, what wouldst thou of us at this present? Quoth Hassan, I would have you carry me forthwith to the city of Baghdad, me and my wife and this honest woman. But hearing his words, they hung down their heads and were silent, whereupon Hassan asked them, Why do ye not reply? And they answered as with one voice, O our Lord and ruler over us, we are of the covenant of Solomon, son of David, on the twain be peace. And he sweareth in that we would bear none of the sons of Adam on our backs, since which time we have borne no mortal on back or shoulder, but we will straightway harness the horses of the jinn, and they shall carry thee and thy company to thy country. Hassan inquired, How far are we from Baghdad? And they said, 7 years' journey for a diligent horseman. Hassan marveled at this, and said to them, Then how came I hither in less than a year? They said, Allah soften to thee the hearts of his pious servants. Else hast thou never come to this country, nor hast thou set eyes on these regions. No, never. For the Sheikh Abd al-Qadas, who mounted thee on the elephant and the magical horse, traversed with thee in 10 days, 3 days' journey for a well-girt rider, and the Ifrit Danish, to whom the Sheikh committed thee, carried thee a 3 years' march and a day and a night, all which was of the blessing of the Allah Almighty, for that the Sheikh Abu al-Ruwashai is of the seed of Asif bin Barkaya, and knoweth the most great name of Allah. Moreover, from Baghdad to the palace of the damsels is a year's journey, and this maketh up the 7 years. When Hassan heard this, he marveled with exceeding marvel, and cried, Glory be to God, facilitator of the hard, fortifier of the weak heart, approximator of the far, and humbler of every froward tyrant, who hath eased us in every accident, and carried me to these countries, and subjected me to these creatures, and reunited me with my wife and children. I know not whether I am asleep or awake, or if I am sober or drunken. Then he turned to the jinn and asked, When ye have mounted me upon your steeds, in how many days will they bring us to Baghdad? And they answered, They will carry you thither under the year, but not till after ye have endured terrible perils and hardships and horrors, and ye have traversed thirsty wadis and frightful wastes, and horrible steeds without number, and we cannot promise thee safety, O our Lord, from the people of these islands. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 826th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the Jann said to Hassan, We cannot promise thee safety, O our lord, from the islandry, nor from the mischief of the supreme king and his enchanters and warlocks. It may be they will overcome us and take you from us, and we will fall into affliction from them, and all to whom the tidings shall come after this shall say to us, Ye are wrongdoers. How could you go against the supreme king, and carry a mortal out of his dominions, and the king's daughter with him? Wert thou alone with us, the thing would be light. But he who conveyed thee hither is capable to carry thee back to thy country, and reunite thee with thine own people, for right in the readiest of plight. So take heart, and put thy trust in Allah, and fear not, for we are at thy service to convey thee to thy country. Hassan thanked him, and therefore said, Allah requite you with good. But now make haste with the horses. They replied, We hear, and we obey, and struck the ground with their feet, whereupon it opened, and they disappeared within it, and were absent a while, after which they suddenly reappeared with 3 horses, saddled and bridled, and on each saddle-bow a pair of saddlebags with a leathern bottle of water in one pocket, and the other full of provant. So Hassan mounted one steed, and took a child before him, while his wife mounted a second, and took the other child before her. Then the old woman alighted with the jar, and bestrode the 3rd horse, and they rode on without ceasing all night. At break of day they turned aside from the road, and made for the mountain, whilst their tongues ceased not to name Allah. Then they fared on under the highland all that day, till Hassan caught sight of the black object afar, as it were a far column of a smoke a-twisting skywards. So he recited somewhat of the Koran and the Holy Writ, and sought refuge with Allah from Satan and the stoned. The black thing grew plainer as they drew near, and when hard by it they saw that it was an ifrit, with a head like a huge dome, and tusks like grapnels, and jaws like a lane, and nostrils like ewers, and ears like a leathern targe, and mouth like a cave, and teeth like pillar of stones, and hands like winnowing forks, and legs like masts. His head was in the cloud, and his feet in the bowels of the earth had ploughed. When Hassan gazed upon him, he bowed himself and kissed the ground before him, saying, O Hassan, have no fear of me, for I am chief of the dwellers in this land, which is the first of the Isles of Wak, and I am a Moslem, and an adorer of the one God. I have heard of you and your coming, and when I knew of your case, I desired to depart from the land of the magicians to another land, void of inhabitants, and far from men and jinn, that I might dwell there alone and worship Allah, till my fated end came upon me. So I wish to accompany you and be your guide till ye fare forth of the Wak Islands, and I will not appear save at night. And do you hearken your hearts on my account, for I am a Moslem, even as ye are Moslems. When Hassan heard the Ifrit's words, he rejoiced with exceeding joy, and made sure of deliverance. And he said to him, Allah requite thee weal. Go with us, relying upon the blessings of Allah. So the Ifrit forth went with them, and they followed, taking and making merry, for their hearts were pleased, and their breasts were eased. And Hassan fell to telling his wife all that had befallen him, and all the hardships he had undergone, whilst she excused herself to him, and told him in turn all she had seen and suffered. They ceased not faring all that night. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 827th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that they ceased not faring all that night, and the horses bore them like the blinding levin. And when the day rose, all put their hands to the saddlebags, and took forth provant, which they ate, and water, which they drank. Then they sped diligently on their way, preceded by the Ifrit, who turned aside with them from the beaten track into another road, till then untrodden along the seashore. And they ceased not faring on, without stopping across wadis and wolds, a whole month, till on the 31st day there arose before them a dust cloud that walled the world and darkened the day. And when Hassan saw this, he was confused and turned pale, and more so when a frightful crying and clamor struck their ears. Thereupon the old woman said to him, O my son, This is the army of the Wak Islands that hath overtaken us, and presently they lay violent hands on us. Hassan asked, What shall I do, O my mother? And she answered, Strike the earth with thy rod. He did so, whereupon the 7 kings presented themselves and saluted him with a salam, kissing ground before him and saying, Fear not, neither grieve. Hassan rejoiced at these words and answered them, saying, Well said, O prince of the Jinn and the Ifrits, this is your time. Quoth they, Get ye up to the mountain top, thou and thy wife and children, and she who is with thee, and leave us to deal with them. For we know that you all in the right, and they are in the wrong, and Allah will aid us against them. So Hassan and his wife and children and the old woman dismounted, and dismissing the horses, ascended the flank of the mountain. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 828th night, she continued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Hassan with his wife, his children, and the ancient dame ascended the mountain flank after they had dismissed the coursers. Presently up came Queen Nur al-Huda with the troops right and left, and the captains went round about among the host and ranged them rank by rank in battle array. Then the host charged down upon each the other, and clashed together twain with a mighty strain. And the brave pressed on amain, and the coward to fly was fain. And the Jinn cast flames of fire with their mouths, whilst the smoke of them rose up to the confines of the sky. And the 2 armies appeared and disappeared. The champions fought, and heads flew from trunks, and the blood ran in reels, nor did brand leave to play with blood to flow, and battle fire to flow, till the murk o' night came, when the 2 hosts drew apart, and alighting from their steeds, rested upon the field by the fires that they had kindled. Therewith the 7 kings went up to Hassan, and kissed the earth before him. He pressed forward to meet them, and thanked them, and prayed Allah to give them the victory, and asked them how they fared with the queen's troop. Quoth they, They will not understand us more than 3 days, for we had better off them today, taking some 2,000 of them prisoners, and slaying of them much folk, whose compt may not be told. So be of good cheer and broad breast. Then they farewelled them, and went down to look after the safety of their troops. And they ceased not to keep up the fires till the morning rose with its sheen and shone, when the fighting men mounted their horses of noble strain, and smote one another with thin-edged skein, and with brown of bill that they thrust amain, nor did they cease the day battle to derange. Moreover, they passed the night on horseback, clashing together like dashing seas. Raged among them the fires of war, and they stinted not from battle and jar, till the armies of the Wak were defeated, and their power broken, and their courage quelled. Their feet slipped, and whither they fled, sober defeated was before them. Wherefore they turned tail, and of the flight began to avail. But the most part of them were slain, and their queen, and her chief officers, and the grandees of her realm were captive taken. When the morning morrowed, the 7 kings presented themselves before Hassan, and set for him a throne of alabaster, inlaid with pearls and jewels, and he sat down thereon. They also set before a throne of ivory, plated with glittering gold, for the princess Manar al-Sana, and another for the ancient dame, Shawahah Zat al-Dawai. Then they brought before them the prisoners, and among the rest, Queen Nur al-Huda, with elbows pinioned, and feet fettered, whom when Shawahai saw, she said to her, Thy recompense, O harlot, O tyrant, shall be that 2 bitches be starved, and 2 mares stinted of water, till they be athirst. Then shalt thou be bound to the mares' tails, and these driven to the river, with the bitches following thee, that they may rend thy skin, and after thy flesh shall be cut off and given them to eat. How canst thou do with thy sister such a deed? O strumpet, seeing that she was lawfully married after the ordinance of Allah and of his apostles. For there is no monarchy in al-Islam, and marriage is one of the institutions of the apostles, on whom be peace. Nor were women created but for men. Then Hassan commanded to put all the captives to the sword, and the old woman cried out, saying, "Slay them all, and spare none." But when Princess Manar al-Sana saw her sister in this plight, a bondswoman and in fetters, she wept over her and said, "O my sister, who is this hath conquered us, and made us captives in our own country?" Quoth Nur al-Huda, "Verily, this is a mighty matter. Indeed, this man Hassan hath gotten the mastery over us, and Allah hath given him dominion over us, and over all our realm, and he hath overcome us and the kings of the Jinn." And quoth her sister, "Indeed, Allah aided him not against you, nor did he overcome you, nor capture you, save by means of the cap and rod." So Nur al-Huda was certified and assured that he had conquered her by means thereof, and humbled herself to her sister, till she was moved to ruth for her, and said to her husband, "What wilt thou do with my sister? Behold, she is in thy hands, and she hath done thee no misdeed, that thou shouldest punish her." Replied Hassan, "Her torturing of thee was misdeed enow." But she answered, saying, "She hath excuse for all she did with me. As for thee, thou hast set my father's heart on fire for the loss of me, and what will be his case if he lose my sister also?" And he said to her, "'Tis thine to decide. Do whatso thou wilt." So she bade them loose her sister and the rest of the captives, and they did her bidding. Then she went up to Queen Nur al-Huda and embraced her, and they wept together for a long while. After which quoth the queen, "O my sister, bear me not malice for that which I did with thee." And quoth Manar al-Sana, "O my sister, this was foreordained to me by fate." Then they sat on the couch talking, and Manar al-Sana made peace between the old woman and her sister after the goodliest fashion, and their hearts were set at ease. Thereupon Hassan dismissed the servants of the rod, thanking them for the succor which they had afforded him against his foes. And Manar al-Sana related to her sister all that had befallen her with Hassan, her husband, and everything he had suffered for her sake, saying, "O my sister, since he hath done these deeds, and is possessed of this might, and Allah Almighty hath gifted him with such exceeding prowess, that he hath entered our country, and beaten thine army, and taken thee prisoner, and defied our father, the supreme king, who hath dominion over all the princes of the Jinn, it behoveth us to fail not of what is due to him." Replied Nur al-Huda, "By Allah, O my sister, thou sayest sooth in whatso thou tellest me of the marvels which this man hath seen and suffered, and none may fail of respect to him. But was all this on thine account, O my sister?" And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 829th night, she pursued, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Princess Manar al-Sana repeated to her sister these praises of Hassan, the other replied, By Allah, this man can claim all respect more by token of his generosity. But was all this on thine account?" "Yes," answered Manar al-Sana, and they passed the night in converse, till the morning morrowed, and the sun rose, and they were minded to depart. So they farewelled one another, and Manar al-Sana gave God speed to the ancient dame, after the reconciling her with Queen Nur al-Huda. Thereupon Hassan smote the earth with a rod, and its servants, the Jinn, appeared, and saluted, saying, "Praised be Allah, who hath set thy soul at rest. Command us what thou wilt, and we will do it with thee in less than the twinkling of an eye." He thanked them for their saying, and said to them, "Allah requite you with good. Saddle me 2 steeds of the best." So they brought him forthwith 2 saddle coursers, one of which he mounted, taking his elder son before him, and his wife rode the other, taking the younger son in front of her. Then the queen and the old woman also backed horse and departed, Hassan and his wife following the right, and Nur al-Huda and Shawahai the left-hand road. The spouses fared on with their children without stopping for a whole month, till they drew in sight of a city which they found compassed about with trees and streams, and making the trees dismounted between them, thinking to rest there. As they sat talking, behold, They saw many horsemen coming towards them, whereupon Hassan rose, and going to meet them, saw that it was King Hassun, lord of the land of Camphor and castle of Crystal, with his attendants. So Hassan went up to the king and kissed his hands and saluted him. And when Hassun saw him, he dismounted, and seating himself with Hassan upon carpets under the trees, returned his salam, and gave him joy of his safety, and rejoiced in him with exceeding joy, saying to him, O Hassan, tell me all that hath befallen thee, first and last. So he told him all of that which had happened to him, whereupon the king marveled, and said to him, O my son, none ever reached the islands of Wak, and returned thence, but thou, and indeed thy case is wondrous. But Alhamdulillah, praise be God, for safety. Then he mounted, and bade Hassan ride with his wife and children into the city, where he lodged them in a guest house of his palace, and they abode with him 3 days, eating and drinking in mirth and merriment, after which Hassan sought Hassun's leave to depart to his own country, and the king granted it. Accordingly they took horse, and the king rode with them 10 days, after which he farewelled them, and turned back, while Hassan and his wife and children fared on a whole month, at the end of which time they came to a great cavern, whose floor was of brass. Quoth Hassan to his wife, Keenest thou yonder cave? And quoth she, No. Said he, Therein dwelleth the Sheikh Abu Ruwashai hight, to whom I am greatly beholden, for that he was the means of my becoming acquainted with King Hassun. Then he went on to tell her all that had passed between them, and Abu al-Rawashai and he was thus engaged. Behold, the sheikh himself issued from the cavern mouth. When Hassan saw him, he dismounted from his steed, and kissed his hands, and the old man saluted him, and gave joy in his safety, and rejoiced in him. Then he carried him into the entree, and sat down with him, whilst Hassan related to him what had befallen him in the islands of Wak. Whereat the elder marveled with exceeding marvel, and said, O Hassan, how dost thou deliver thy wife and children? So he told them the tale of the cap and the rod, hearing which he wondered, and said, O Hassan, O my son, but this rod and the cap, thou hast never delivered thy wife and children. And he replied, Even so, O my lord. As they were talking, there came a knocking at the door, and Abu al-Ruwashai went out and found Abd al-Qudus mounted on his elephant. So he saluted him, and brought him into the cavern, where he embraced Hassan, and congratulated him on his safety, rejoicing greatly in his return. Then said Abu Ruwashai to Hassan, Tell the Sheikh Abd al-Qudus all that hath befallen thee, O Hassan. He repeated to him everything that had passed, first and last, till he came to the tale of the rod and the cap. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease the telling of this tale, till it be morrow.